Hey, thanks for coming. Today is a difficult subject for me to talk about for a number of reasons. This is actually a talk designed for males about using sex to control the kundalini. And maybe a little bit of information is useful at this point before we get into the talk. This talk is from the perspective of Tantra. Tantra says that the kundalini is in full force operating all the time. So this is a little bit at variance with the common description of the kundalini. What you hear people saying is it's like a snake, a cobra, coiled up at the base of the spine 3.5 times. And you have to do things to awaken it. Well, that's a useful fiction. How could the kundalini be coiled up when you have the statement that it's in full force and it's already operating? And the answer is this is an analogy for the process of discovering that the kundalini has always been awake. So the people that know, let people keep on thinking that and don't tell them any different. Unfortunately for me, the people that have been studying with me are coming to the point where they are going to have to know this. And why is that? It's because they've been successful in modifying reality and getting what they want. So the time for them to know about this, the truth about this useful fiction, is coming. So if the kundalini is operating in your life, where is it? And the answer is real simple. It's in your emotions. Your emotions are the kundalini in motion. So, I made a study of the law of attraction. And what it says is whatever you think about comes to pass. And that's absolutely true. But then they missed the most important part. Whatever your emotions get behind the thought that you have is when it manifests. Okay, well, let me give you some examples. You're a high school student and you graduate and you want to become a doctor. Okay, well, good ambition. But unless you have a desire to do that, to put in the study hours, to get the grades, to get the acceptance into the medical school, requires a great deal of study. That study will only happen when you have that burning desire. So it's the kundalini that is hook and is the desire. Okay. another thing to talk about, okay, so desires are the key to making the kundalini manifest things. This talk is for men because women, as a general rule, already have the kundalini awake. So then the issue with them is not to awaken the kundalini, it's to learn how to control it. And you do that by controlling your emotions. Okay. Some of the directions for awakening the kundalini you don't see anywhere else talking about how awakening the kundalini is tied to biological functions. And how you do that. Well, let me just, okay, so this is not the time to talk about the 8 limbs of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, except to say that the third limb is pranayama. That is tied to desire to be alive, primarily through the breath. So when you look at people talking about pranayama exercises, what they talk about is doing alternate nostril breathing, and eventually they all say that the kundalini is most quickly awakened, quote unquote, awakened, by holding by retention. They have retention inside, they have retention outside. Okay? That's where the real power of pranayama comes in. So it's relatively innocuous to talk about breathing exercise until you talk about retention of the breath. Now, I don't want to go into that too much more. What happens when you hold the breath, either inside or outside, you invoke the fight or flight syndrome because there's a lack of oxygen. So then by having this retention, you invoke this fight or flight syndrome and you make the kundalini move. Okay? So if you make the kundalini move, that's the beginning of control. So what they tell you is, okay, when you're doing this retention, the most important thing is to have the breath move slowly and smoothly. And they have the counts and all the other stuff. That's all I'm going to say about that. Say that goes to the biological function to survive. Okay? And that shows you that the kundalini is in operation. Today's discussion is about sex and how you can move the kundalini. Now, this is a very steep path. Okay, when you hear people talking about self-realization, there's always a comparison to climbing a mountain. Now, you've seen mountains that are very tall that sometimes have a steep face and sometimes have a very gentle face. So you can go the slow route, long and windy road, or you can take the steep face. Okay. On the long and windy road, usually a gentle road, takes much longer. The steep face, you have to be well prepared. You have to have all the climbing equipment. You have to have that. You have to have uh, special hammers, special ropes. Have to be able to stay overnight sometimes. Part of the problem with teaching somebody about the kundalini is that it unleashes emotions. And sometimes using sex to awaken the kundalini or to make it express. See, that's the real answer. And that's why the title is called Using Sex to Control the Kundalini. But if emotions are the kundalini in action, then you have to invoke feelings about the sexual act. So the so a problem if someone's going to teach this is how do you prepare somebody to do all this? Okay, if we're going to talk about sex and we're going to talk about controlling the kundalini, we have to talk about how the kundalini is controlled. And to embody the control of the kundalini means that you have to store the kundalini in your body. It can be compared to a physical substance. Okay, so here's a word you may not have heard. It's called ojas, spelled O-J-A-S. And if you go look it up, what it says is that the semen, when it is retained inside the body, gets transmuted into a substance called ojas. Sometimes it's called chi. Okay. So there's techniques that have been developed in China and India, in Tibet, that deal with this conversion. So there's another, okay, so one of the things is I'm reluctant to tell you exactly how to do that unless I have some knowledge of where you're at. Because you have a responsibility for what you tell people. So if we're talking about the man, the semen, which is created outside the body for a reason. If it's inside the body, it becomes transmuted into ojas. So that's why when you see mammals and they have testicles, that's because the energy of creation is stored outside the body. So then this is the reason why in spiritual circles it says you shouldn't masturbate because you'll waste the semen. Okay. But there's a whole host of things about that. Uh, so all of the tantric sex is designed to help you retain the semen and to transmute it. For instance, in Tibet, there's a posture called the Yab Yum. And what you'll see, if you see that, if you go look on the web, you'll see that people, a man and a woman, the woman is sitting in the man's lap. And what you don't see is that actually they're hooked up. And then the man and the woman pass the energy back that gets manifested back and forth. And what this does is transmute the semen. Okay, there is an effect on the woman as well. Okay. So if you look at the tantrics and you look at the iconography, there's a diagram of Shiva being conjoined with Shakti. And so this represents the union of the male and female aspects. I think that's as far as I want to go today on this. Thank you for listening.